Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolutely wild and honestly pretty forgotten history of how Earth's ancient plant kingdoms were repeatedly wiped out by catastrophic climate change. When we think of prehistoric extinctions, our minds almost always jump straight to a T-Rex looking up at a fiery sky, right? But the true history of our planet is actually written in green. We're going to explore how towering, alien-looking forests rose to absolute dominance, literally sculpted the air we breathe, and then dramatically collapsed. It's a chilling question, isn't it? What actually happens when Earth's forests just vanish? To find the answer, we've got to look back hundreds of millions of years into deep time. And we aren't just talking about a few individual species dying off here. We're looking at the total erasure of entire botanical worlds. Massive shifts in global temperature, violently changing oceans, and sudden impacts from space completely rebooted ecosystems that had been thriving for millions of years. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. Forget the dinosaurs for a minute. For the vast majority of Earth's history, entire ecosystems, global food chains, and planetary climates were completely sculpted by plants. I'm talking giant ferns taller than modern buildings, and endless moss-covered swamps stretching across whole continents. Today, we're exploring how these incredible green worlds rose to power and how they violently fell. Let's quickly check out this timeline to get our bearings. 470 million years ago, the very first plants colonized land. Then, 300 million years ago, those massive Carboniferous swamp forests emerge. Fast forward to 252 million years ago, and we hit the Great Dying. And finally, 66 million years ago, the infamous asteroid impact. All right, let's jump right into our first era, Earth's first green world and the cooling. Picture this. 470 million years ago, Earth was literally just endless, barren rock. Nothing there. But then, these tiny, moss-like organisms began to colonize it. Over millions of years, they evolved roots and primitive vascular systems so they could grow taller. But here's the incredible paradox. As these early plants spread, they sucked up immense amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to fuel their photosynthesis. Talk about suffering from your own success, right? By pulling so much greenhouse gas out of the sky, they ironically triggered a massive global cooling event. They created freezing conditions that eventually destroyed many of those very same ancient ecosystems. Next up, we have the lost forests of the Carboniferous. Fast forward to 300 million years ago, right into the intensely humid Carboniferous period. We're talking about sheer unbelievable scale here. Giant club mosses, towering lycopod trees, and massive seed ferns grew over 100 feet tall, reaching way up into that humid sky. And as these colossal plants lived and died, they fell into swamps, burying absolutely massive quantities of vegetation. Now here's why this matters to you and me today. Over millions of years, that crushed, compacted plant material from those dead ancient forests, well, that became the vast coal deposits that humanity currently burns for energy. But as we know, the climate doesn't just sit still. The warm, humid environments that these towering plants completely depended on, they began to disappear as glaciers expanded across parts of the planet. Rainfall patterns shifted violently. Those massive swamp ecosystems started drying out. Entire forest systems collapsed, and the dominant plant groups vanished forever. It was literally one of Earth's earliest major ecological disasters, and it was driven largely by climate instability. And of course, when the forests died, countless animal species that relied on them vanished right alongside them. Which brings us to a really dark chapter, the Great Dying and planetary devastation. By 252 million years ago, we arrive at the absolute deadliest extinction event in Earth's long history, the Great Dying. Now, this wasn't just some slow shift in the weather. Gigantic volcanic eruptions in modern-day Siberia basically ripped open the Earth, releasing staggering, almost unimaginable amounts of carbon dioxide and methane directly into the atmosphere. The rapid atmospheric heating completely spiraled out of control. It was literally choking the planet. When you look at the cascading failures mapped out here, they were just apocalyptic. The volcanism caused extreme planetary heating and stripped the oxygen right out of the oceans. Acid rain poured from the skies, sparking continent-wide wildfires that spread incredibly fast. Plant life suffered catastrophic losses. Fossil evidence shows once lush landscapes becoming totally barren rock. And without the roots of healthy forests to hold the ground together, massive soil erosion took hold. Entire continents lost their forests for thousands of years, making recovery nearly impossible. It actually took millions of years for Earth's ecosystems to fully bounce back from this planetary-scale climate disaster. All right, let's look at when dinosaur plants disappeared. Let's shift our focus to a time you might be a bit more familiar with, 66 million years ago. The forests walked by dinosaurs were strange, dominated by massive conifers, cycads, and ferns. They survived for millions of years, until an asteroid slammed into Earth near present-day Mexico. The sequence of destruction was unimaginably swift. Dust and soot were violently ejected into the atmosphere, totally blocking out the sunlight. Global temperatures plummeted. Plunged into total darkness, photosynthesis ground to an absolute halt. The plants began to starve, and as they died, the entire global food chain collapsed right behind them. Many of those ancient plant species just vanished permanently into the dark. But here's the thing. Earth is incredibly resilient. From the ashes of these destroyed dinosaur-era forests, an unbelievable opportunity actually arose. Flowering plants, which had mostly just been hanging out in the background before, totally seized the moment in this post-impact world. They spread rapidly, adapted to the new conditions, and eventually grew to dominate the modern Earth we know today. Literally, a destroyed plant world gave rise to another. Moving on to the ice ages and vanishing landscapes. Coming much closer to our current era, Earth entered a cyclical phase of ice ages. The climate basically swung back and forth like a giant pendulum. Gigantic glaciers advanced massively across the continents, grinding lush forests straight into frozen tundra. As all that ice moved, plant zones were forced to migrate thousands of miles just to survive. Some species managed to adapt and move, but others just couldn't migrate fast enough. Ancient ecosystems fragmented and completely vanished over incredibly short geological periods. And this perfectly illustrates the running theme here. When the plant worlds collapse, the entirety of the ecosystem, the insects, the mammals, the birds, goes down with them. And that leads us to our final section, the modern warning. This brings us right outside our own window. The forests and green spaces we see today, they're the hardened survivors of these countless past extinctions. But when we lay out these stark parallels, the echoes of the past become basically impossible to ignore. Ancient extinctions were triggered by immense volcanic gas, asteroids, and expanding ice. Today, scientists warn we're entering another major ecological transformation. Our modern forests are facing rapidly rising temperatures, severe multi-year droughts, and increasingly devastating wildfires. We're seeing coral reefs bleaching and massive rainforests facing severe dieback. Modern climate change is visibly, undeniably echoing the deep past. If the long, violent history of plants tells us anything, it explicitly tells us that dominant plant worlds have been repeatedly erased by climate shifts. No ecosystem lasts forever. But, and I think this is equally important, it also reveals that life is remarkably, stubbornly adaptable. New, vibrant ecosystems do eventually emerge from the ashes of catastrophe. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. The history of plants isn't just some story about green leaves and prehistoric swamps. It's the ultimate story of survival through planetary change. As humanity actively witnesses and honestly influences another massive planetary transformation unfolding right before our eyes, what will be the ultimate legacy of our green world? When the dust settles millions of years from now, what new ecosystem will have taken our place? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your curiosity alive and keep exploring the absolutely incredible history of our ancient Earth.